Our ghostly encounter. Warning from a spirit. I never believed in ghosts. Not until that fall weekend when everything changed. It was the second week of October when my cousin Jalen and I decided to take a break from college stress and spend the weekend in the countryside. Jalen had inherited an old farmhouse from his grandfather, a place neither of us had seen before. According to him, it was quiet, remote, and perfect for studying. But we both knew we were just looking for an escape. The house was a tall, two-story colonial nestled between pine trees that looked like they'd been there since the Civil War. It had a sagging porch, flaking paint, and windows that reflected nothing. Even in daylight, the place looked off. Still, we settled in. We brought snacks, games, and speakers to blast music. The first night was chill. We cooked ramen over the stove, watched dumb horror movies, and crashed early after a few beers. But the second night, that's when everything started. It began with a noise. At around 2:30 a.m., I woke up to what sounded like knocking. Not soft tapping, but 3 heavy knocks echoing from somewhere downstairs. I sat up, rubbed my eyes, and listened. Nothing. I figured maybe Jalen was messing with me, so I whispered, "Yo, cut it out!" No reply. I looked over. Jalen was out cold, his mouth wide open, snoring like a busted vacuum. I lay back down, but the second my head hit the pillow, knock, knock, knock. This time it was louder, closer. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. The hallway outside our room was pitch black. I tiptoed down the creaky stairs, each step feeling like it echoed through the walls. I reached the front door where the knocking seemed to come from. I opened it. No one was there. Just the wind rustling leaves. A full moon cast everything in a silver glow. I checked the porch, the steps, even the yard. Nothing. But just as I turned around to go back in, I caught a glimpse of something. A shadow, standing at the edge of the woods. It looked human, but too tall, too still. I blinked. It was gone. I slammed the door shut and bolted upstairs. The next morning I told Jalen everything. He laughed.
"You saw Slender Man, bro. Must have been one of those expired beers."
But I wasn't laughing. As the day went on, strange things kept happening. Lights flickering, the air suddenly cold, the smell of something burning, though nothing was cooking. And then, we found the journal. We'd been exploring the attic when Jalen kicked over an old trunk. Inside were dust-covered books, vintage photographs, and a black leather journal with LH etched into the cover. We sat down and flipped it open. The entries were written in elegant cursive, dated 1934 to 1936, October 19th, 1934. "There's something wrong with this land. Father says it's just my nerves, but I see it. A woman in white always near the trees, watching, whispering. January 8th, 1935. The woman came to my window last night. Her eyes, they weren't eyes, they were holes. March 3rd, 1936. She warned me, said the land was poisoned, cursed by something ancient. That death follows anyone who stays too long. I tried to leave, Father wouldn't let me. Now Mother is gone, vanished." We both stared at each other, silent. "Creepy bedtime story," Jalen said, trying to sound brave, but I could see his hands trembling. That night, we locked the doors, closed the windows, and tried to ignore the cold that had settled over the house. It didn't work. At exactly 3 a.m., we both woke up gasping for breath. The air was thick, like breathing underwater. Then, the whispering started. Low at first, then louder. It was coming from the hallway, then the walls, then inside our room. We sat up and looked around. The shadows seemed to move, stretch, swirl. Then, she appeared. A woman dressed in a tattered white gown, her face pale and sunken. Her eyes were dark voids, not angry, not cruel, just hollow. We froze. She opened her mouth and her voice sounded like wind rushing through trees.
"Leave before it wakes."
The lights flickered violently. The room seemed to tilt. And then, just as suddenly as she appeared, she was gone. Silence returned. But the air, it hummed with something ancient, like the whole house was holding its breath. We didn't sleep. At dawn we packed. Jalen kept trying to laugh it off, but I could see fear in his eyes. Just before we left, I had this strange feeling to go back up to the attic. Something was calling me. There, on the floor where we'd left the journal, was a photograph. One we hadn't seen before. It was a black and white image of a young woman standing in front of the house. The same woman in white. On the back, someone had scribbled, "Lillian Harrow, vanished 1936, last seen near the woods." Underneath that, a different darker ink had scrawled, "The root never dies." We drove back to campus in complete silence. That night, I dreamed of trees bleeding, a voice humming lullabies in reverse, and a face watching from behind a veil. Weeks passed, but neither of us spoke of it again, until Jalen stopped answering my texts. I called, no answer. I drove to his dorm. His roommate said Jalen had gone back to the farmhouse, said he needed closure. I never saw Jalen again. The police found his car, parked outside the house. The engine still warm, the door wide open. But Jalen? Gone. Inside the house, on the wall of the attic, scratched in something dark, were the words, "I didn't leave in time." I've had dreams since then. The woman comes to me. Same warning, same hollow voice. Leave before it wakes. I don't know what it is. Maybe the land itself. Maybe something buried deep beneath. All I know is, I can't stop thinking about going back. About finishing what Jalen started. But something tells me, if I do, I won't come back either. So if you're reading this, consider this your warning. That place isn't abandoned. It's waiting. And if you stay too long, it finds you. Even in your dreams.